This is the Bishop Cross-Border Investment Services podcast. I'm Lee Scully. I'm an associate investment advisor. This is Stephen Bishop, our lead advisor and founding member. We help anyone in a cross-border situation having moved from the US to Canada or vice versa. We help them manage the investment accounts that they might have and a lot of other areas of their personal finances. One thing that we've seen a lot lately, and we'll probably see a lot of going forward, is the subject of inheritance. So in a lot of cases, it's a Canadian resident who has moved here or is moving here and has a family.
Or is from here.
Or is from here and is moving back
Yeah.
and has a family in the U.S. And there's all of a sudden a U.S. estate, someone passes away and they're to receive assets or things of value. And it becomes complicated and they're unsure of how to administer that and deal with it. What are some things that you've noticed and some stories that are more common and some things about that topic?
Well, it's common, and it'll be more common, I believe. But the situations are where someone who's living here for whatever reason, they're here now, and a family member passes away in the United States, and there's an estate to get settled, and they're the beneficiary or one of the beneficiaries of the estate, and so in some cases we've seen it can be simple as they just have they've inherited an IRA, which they're the beneficiary of, so they need help with that. But then in other cases it gets bigger. They've inherited IRAs. There's a U.S. domicile trust that they're not just the beneficiary of, but they are now the successor trustee of, and they now have to administer the trust. And then you get taxable assets in brokerage accounts. So for instance, the deceased had a very large stock portfolio that's now in an estate account, but it's a taxable account. But the person in Canada is to receive a portion of those positions. That was the decision in the estate, that they would get either all of the positions or half of the positions in kind, and so on and so forth. And so the person needs help because they're dealing with an estate that's domiciled in the States. It's complicated. It's got multiple layers. It's got the IRAs, and it's got trusts, and it's got taxable accounts, and they're looking for a place where this work can be facilitated, and they can deal with one person or one firm for all of that, all under one roof, and get advice on all of the pieces of that. And so, which is what we do. That's what we do with cross-border services, being dual licensed. And it's some of those situations are a little more complicated than just something simple, but overall, like we can, for the taxable accounts, or for the taxable accounts, like, so let's just say the estate has shares of Microsoft and Home Depot and all, a list of American companies, and the client wants to keep them, and a US dollar brokerage account. So we can do that. We can, we set up the US dollar brokerage account on the Raymond James Canada platform, actually, and those assets get transferred over, and we receive them in kind, so they can keep those. And then the IRAs, beneficiary IRAs, we open it up on the Raymond James USA platform, and then that goes over there, and we can work with them on that, and so on. So, so if someone is dealing with an estate where they've been notified that they're a beneficiary of this U.S. estate, and they have to deal with their beneficiary in any way, like IRA, a trust, taxable account, we can help them.
Yep. And like a lot of other things, we're one piece of the puzzle. So every case is unique and some are more complex than others. But ultimately, for people watching, someone should typically have a few different chefs in the kitchen to make sure everything's moving the way it should. So as an example, one thing that I saw recently, and I've seen a couple times, it's a U.S. trust. And then this is where it gets fun, is that one beneficiary happens to be in Canada, a few others are in the U.S., and maybe the accounts that are to be inherited, the trust is actually the beneficiary of the account, so it first has to go to the trust, and then it's a way of figuring out how it gets dispersed, or if it gets dispersed to the trust beneficiaries. So there's a few layers. There's legal layers, there are tax layers. You need a few different information sources that all come together and solve the puzzle.
Yeah, a lot of that stuff gets dealt with in the U.S.
Right.
What the beneficiary needs to know is what, in the end, when they get through the estate, the settlement of the estate, and then they know what's going, how much there is and what has to happen to it. Once that resident of Nova Scotia or Canada or the Maritime provinces, where we really focus, once that person knows what they're getting, and that gets communicated to us, then we can facilitate it, and if it's the transfer of assets of any kind, like our administrative staff, they'll work with the administrative staff on the other end. Let's say wherever the brokerage accounts are, whatever brokerage firm it is in the States, and with the executor and those types of things, they'll work with them to facilitate the transfer and things. So, it's just basically if you're in that situation and you need some guidance on what to do, click the contact us button and make your inquiry and connect with us so we can help them.
Exactly. Thanks, Stephen.
You're welcome.